All right, welcome back to another Tech Talk. I'm your host Josh from KeepItTechie, and I'm excited about my guest today. It's super, this is gonna be super dope, conversation. I think, um, I got my man Derek from DistroTube, and if you guys have never heard of Derek, you need to get over to his channel and check him out. But Derek, he kind of inspired me to. Uh, talk about Linux, out here on YouTube. He's one of the first YouTubers I ran into, that covered the Linux operating system in a very, technical way. Even him and Joe Collins. But yeah, Derek has been around for a while, and he kind of inspired me to really push and do this Linux content, and put it out there for people that may be interested in getting into Linux and learning Linux. But welcome, Derek. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing great. It's good to be with you, Josh. Finally get on camera with you. I know we've talked about it for a while, but this will be the first time we've done one of these, and I do appreciate talking to one of my fellow Louisiana brothers, and of course a Saints fan. Although we really can't talk about the Saints
I know,
right now
right?
because it's pretty bad year. So.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. Oh man, yeah. It's like I said, man. I'm excited to talk to you, man. We have been talking about doing this for a while, and yeah, I just um we finally got together though.
Right.
Yeah. But um first off, just go on and what I always like to do is let the guests introduce themselves. So go on and introduce yourself, and tell people, a little bit about yourself.
Right. Well, as Josh said, my name's Derek Taylor. I run a YouTube channel called DistroTube, um, which, people refer to me as DT because the channel name is DistroTube, but my actual initials are DT. So actually, people in real life, I've always called me DT. People online now call me DT. So it kind of works on two different levels there, which is nice. I started doing YouTube videos about 5 years ago, and 5 years ago this past October, so right at 5 years. Um, Initially, just making some Linux content, just as kind of fun, just to do something. I never made a video. I didn't really know much about video platforms like YouTube or social media in general. Didn't have Facebook account at the time. Really didn't play on any of that stuff. But I saw people making like educational content, tutorial stuff on a wide variety of topics on video formats, and people seem to like that kind of stuff. And I thought I was a pretty good teacher, in real life. I like teaching people. Went to school and I did some teaching early on in my adult years. Um, and even in the workplace, I'm typically the kind of person that I'll work in HR and training. I've just got that kind of mentality where I can explain something in simple terms and teach people something. And this video format, that seemed like the right way to go. So I started making Linux videos, mainly just to spread the message about, hey, this operating system out there that most people don't know about, because it's pretty much all Windows all the time, right? And out in life. And the very first video I ever made was actually just a quick look at Manjaro's KDE edition.
Okay.
And that video did okay. Made some more videos. I was surprised people watched it, actually. It
Hmm.
wasn't a lot of, I don't know. I probably got 100 views or whatever it was at the time, over a couple of weeks. I just kept making more videos because I was actually surprised that I got a single view on this stuff. Because again, I didn't know about it. So, I made some videos about, I think, some command line utilities next. And then I made some videos about some window managers. Early on in the channel, I focused a lot on OpenBox, which is a floating window manager that I really love, I've used for many years. And then I spent a lot of time talking about Qtile, which is a tiling window manager that I've been using for a number of years. And Qtile especially wasn't very popular at the time.
Hmm.
And I was really wanting to promote that project because I thought it deserved more attention. And and anyway, I start making all of these videos, and I gained a little bit of popularity over time. And Eventually, it got to the point where, I was getting a lot of views, a lot of subscribers. And in 2020, of course, the shutdown, the
Oh yeah.
pandemic, and the place I was working for a large retailer as a supervisor.
Mhm.
And retail, even before the pandemic, most big retailers were having financial problems. Many of them were filing for bankruptcy. And the company I was working with at the time, I knew was having some problems. So I was already planning on potentially not having that job much longer. The shutdown happened. Um, I went ahead and quit when the shutdown happened. I went
Okay.
ahead and because I knew I wasn't coming back. And by not coming back, I mean my position probably wouldn't have been there anyway. And that was actually the case. After the 2 month shutdown,
Mhm.
they eliminated most of the supervisory positions, including the one I had held. So I wouldn't have had a
Okay.
job anyway. So
Yeah, that's the
luckily
way
I'd
they do
left.
it.
Yeah, I'd already kind of, yeah. And this kind of became my full-time job, making video content um, at first, kind of out of necessity. But then, it's been nearly 3 years now that I've been doing this kind of as a job,
Mhm.
which has been an experience all to its own as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's dope, man. Like it's I don't know, it seems like it's a lot of people's dream to become a YouTuber full time, you know. You
well,
know, where they don't have to. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know about it being a dream. Um, because there's real work involved.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's right, the work involved, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not like all of a sudden, I get this cool job where I don't have to do anything. No, you actually have to work. In
Yep.
many cases, you have to work more because at least when I was working for the man, right?
Yeah.
I had vacation time, I had sick time. If I didn't go into work, I had some paid time, right? There's no paid time with YouTube. If I don't
No.
work, I don't get fed, right? I don't get
Yeah.
paid. I don't, right? So it is a little different.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of like running. I mean, you that's essentially what you're doing. You're running a business at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, there's trade off with everything, right? There's for every give me, there's a gotcha. So
Mhm.
yes, in some ways it's great, in some ways it's not so great.
Mhm. Yep, exactly.
Mhm.
Now, let me ask you this. So, you touched on Linux. What actually got you into the Linux operating system?
Well, I first knew what Linux was back in the mid '90s, where um, I was in my late teenage years in the mid '90s, and the World Wide Web was becoming a thing. Like it was just 1995, 1996, the explosion of the World Wide Web, AOL, and all of the web services. And now everybody needed to be online. And I was one of those kids. I was wanting to especially build my own websites back then because the web was a cool, exciting, interesting. It was a new frontier, right? It was completely different than it is now. And I was just fascinated by the internet, and I was going to build websites. And of course, even in those early days of the web, what did most web servers use? Linux, right?
Yep.
Back then, it was mostly, you'd see a lot of Red Hat. You'd see a lot of Debian even back then. And of course, as the years go by, you still see a lot of Debian, but now you see a lot of Ubuntu servers very popular these days. So, I mean, I've always run these things. CentOS for many years was a popular web server. So I'd always use these Linux distributions on these servers.
Mhm.
I've never ran a graphical environment. I never installed them on physical hardware for, a decade or more. And then around, I don't know, 2006, 2007, I start hearing about people actually running Linux on their actual computers, on their personal computers, their laptops, because I'm on these web dev forums and programming forums, places you hang out online. And
Mhm.
you hear Linux as on the server, but now I'm hearing people, oh, I've got it on my laptop. I'm running Ubuntu on my laptop. It's like, you can do that?
Wow.
And so, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to grab some ISOs, burn some DVDs. Back then, you could fit Ubuntu on a CD.
Yeah, you could. Yep.
They made it a point to never make their ISO bigger than a CD image.
Yep.
So like burn the CDs, and you could test them out on CDs, kind of like you do a live USB. You could just spin it on a CD. It was slow, but it was still cool because it was this. Because even on a CD, it was just so refreshing. This Linux operating system, even it ran better than
Hmm.
Microsoft Windows back then. That was the XP days. Um, and then in 2008. I had a computer that was running XP still at the time, and then it was hacked. It was taken over by some ransomware.
Oh man.
You know one of these attacks where you can't do anything on your computer, and you get a message, "Hey, you've got this virus, but I've got the antivirus for it if you pay this amount of money."
Yeah.
Basically, he's holding my computer hostage,
Hostage. Yep.
and so it's like, there's no way in hell I'm ever paying this guy a penny. I'll quit using computers before I ever give this guy $1, right?
Yeah.
You know what? I've got that Ubuntu CD laying here. Pop it in, formatted my drive without thinking anything about it, and
Hmm.
away I went. And I've never run anything other than Linux on any of my machines since then.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Yeah. Well, see, my story is a little bit different. It started around the same time, and I don't think I ever tell you this, but I started a job as a systems administrator for a small company, and one of the guys that was working there, he set up a lot of the servers using Linux server. He had he managed the DHCP, pretty much everything on the network, the firewall, everything. He set up using Linux, and I had never heard of it before because when I went to school, it was all Windows. That's typically what they teach you when you go to these traditional schools. Windows Server is a thing because that's what's mostly used in a lot of these corporate environments. Well,
yeah.
yeah, by him, showing it to me, I really got intrigued. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I jumped back and forth a little bit because it was kind of difficult in the beginning, and I wasn't forced, kind of like you.
Well, I guess I wasn't forced. I just
Well,
I
yeah,
made the choice.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Which I would have did the exact same thing. I'm not
Mhm.
giving nobody no money
Mm-mm.
for that.
When I know the guy asking for the money, he's the one that hacked my computer. I'm not
Yeah,
giving him right.
exactly. Well, yeah, but yeah, that's how I was first introduced to it, and um, yeah, and since then, all my home computers, because obviously most corporate environments they're gonna have Windows, but all my personal computers, servers, I've been running Linux ever since, and been kind of learning as I go. And was it difficult for you to transition, so to speak?
No, I actually had an easier time probably than most people because um, I didn't really have a job that required any kind of weird specialty kind of software. Like some people,
Hmm.
they have a profession that's kind of niche. The smaller kind of profession you have, the less likely you're going to have software available on Linux, right? If
Yeah.
it's something very popular, that it makes sense for a company to have a Linux version because there's enough of us to buy it, that's fine. But if it's something that there's maybe a few thousand people worldwide that will need the software and maybe 10 of them are on Linux, they're not porting that thing to
Oh yeah.
Linux. So
Yeah.
luckily I wasn't in a situation, I just needed normal stuff, web browser, text editors, multimedia player, just standard basic desktop computer stuff that the average person would use. And
Hmm.
then from there, because I didn't have any hangups as far as there was no software I used to use that I missed or, was causing me problems. Going forward, I just forgot anything about Windows. At that point, if something wasn't available on Linux, it was pretty much dead to me. Like I didn't even consider it. Like somebody's talking about a piece of software. It's a cool piece of software. Does it run on Linux? No, well, it's not for me. So I'm not
Hmm.
missing out on anything. I never had it in the first place. Same
Yeah.
thing with hardware. It got, quickly I realized any piece of hardware I buy, I check, make sure it'll work on Linux. And if it doesn't, just ignore it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, it wasn't a bad problem for me. A lot of people, though, they're going to run into issues because they're going to have like peripheral devices that need Windows drivers, for example, especially like the gamers with their RGB keyboards and mice and things like that, or some of the streaming devices, or that content creators on YouTube and Twitch use. Some of them things only have Windows drivers, and
Mm-hmm.
when you run into that, you get used to these um, programs on Windows, and then you switch to Linux and they're not there. That can create some stress and some frustration with people. Luckily, like I said, I wasn't in a position to have any of that at the time. For me, it was very easy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Matter of fact, I was actually running some free and open source software on Windows even before I switched to Linux. For example, I was already running OpenOffice, LibreOffice at the time. I was running GIMP. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
a Firefox user since the day it came out because I
Okay.
was a Netscape user before that. I'd never used Internet Explorer, so I was running a lot of the standard big free and open source programs. I just wasn't running Linux, so it did make the transition easier.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, it was very difficult for me because, well, not really, um, but mainly because what I did day to day was all on Windows. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I had only used Windows. Since I've been introduced to a computer, but only
Right.
used Windows, and so it was a little bit difficult. I guess for me to transition, and that's where your videos actually came in, because a
Right.
lot of the stuff you talked
Uh,
about on your channel, man, it really helped me in understanding, you know, how to find help that you need in order to figure out certain problems that you may run into. Your channel has been a big help.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, and that's why I've been supporting you, all this time. I really enjoy what you do on your channel, and yeah, you're a great benefit to the Linux community. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and let me give a couple shout outs right fast. I see
Yeah,
a
go
couple
ahead.
of people coming through. Mitchell, my man, how you doing, man? Good to see you. He says two of my favorite YouTubers and great Linux teachers. Yeah, shout out to you, man. Um,
Awesome, Mitchell. Good to
Yep,
see you.
yep. And Edward Newman, what's up, man? Thank you for the donation. I definitely appreciate it. He says, "Love Linux. Keep up the great work, gents." That's actually someone I work with in Afghanistan. Yeah, hit me up, man. When you have time, message me, because I haven't talked to you in a while. I think I talked to you one time since you've been home, since we all been home. But yeah, hit me up, and shout out to Super Slide, man. Definitely appreciate you coming through. Shout out to you guys. Um, Now, let me ask you this, and it's a little off topic of Linux, but do you have any other, hobbies outside of, YouTube and Linux,
Well,
like personal hobbies?
most people are surprised if they haven't been following me for a while, but actually, I have never worked with computers, never worked in IT or network
Mm-hmm.
administration, anything like that. I've never had a job that actually dealt with anything techie.
Yeah.
I just do this for fun. I actually went to school to study music.
Okay.
So I've got a bachelor's and a master's degree in music. That's what I originally went to school for, was to eventually teach music, become a
Mm-hmm.
music teacher. I did teach a little bit um, for a few years, but it's not, I didn't want to teach public school.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be honest with you, it's just kids these days, it's a lot different than when we were kids. I
Yeah.
don't know if you know this, if you've
No,
been in
you're right.
kids.
You're right.
Uh, no, because they just act crazy. They have no respect, and they feel like they can do anything they want. And sometimes you just want to reach out and you want to choke these kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I probably should not be in this environment because I'm going to get in trouble. So
Yeah.
yeah, I get these music degrees, but I'm really haven't been working in a music related field. But obviously, I still play all the time. My main instrument is the trombone. which I've played
Oh, I
some
remember you
trombone
talking
on
about
my
that.
streams before. Yeah, I've played the recorder a few times on some of my streams. I've got some videos of me doing that. I think I played the harmonica one time on stream. I've done a lot of music stuff, just kind of off topic stuff. Typically, when I live stream, people ask, "Hey, man, play something for us."
Yeah.
And sometimes, if I have an instrument handy and I feel like I'm in shape enough to play a little something, I might play something.
Cool, cool. Yeah.
Um,
And that's interesting cuz I um throughout high school, I was in the band and my instrument was the trombone.
yep.
So that's cool. That's cool.
Mhm. Yeah, I could see that because you never want to stereotype people, but trombone players, they have a certain kind of attitude. Like you can always spot the trombone player and that guy. Yeah, that's a tuba player,
Mhm.
and then that's the percussionist. The percussionists are very weird,
Yeah.
right?
But I also played drums
Oh,
at my
okay.
church. Yeah, I played
Oh,
drums at my church.
well, it's different at the church. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's dope. That's dope, man.
Yeah.
I think I remember seeing one of your videos where you were playing, and
Mhm.
that's super awesome. That's super awesome.
Yeah, anybody that wants to check some of that out, if you're curious, I've got, I don't know, a playlist of like 4 or 5 videos, I think, of me playing around on some musical instruments. So it's not hard to find on my channel. Typically, they're just short 3 or 4 minute videos where I play a little something.
Cool, cool, cool. Now,
Mainly just to prove to people that it's real, that I actually do play those instruments.
hmm yeah, yeah. I actually donated mine to the school when I
Yeah.
left. My parents wasn't happy about it when they found out, but I kind of donated because I went to the army, so I just
Right.
passed it on to someone else
Mm,
that may
yeah.
need it. Yeah.
I'm the same way because I don't play that much and I really don't need a lot of the stuff I've acquired to. So I've got some
Mhm.
older instruments that, I've let go.
Yeah,
Uh,
I wish I would have kept it
some
though.
kid's gonna have a better, is gonna get more use out of it than some of the stuff I've got just sitting in a closet.
Yeah, yeah, and that's true.
Right.
That's true. I still got baseball equipment sitting at my parents' house that I haven't
Yeah.
touched. They probably threw it away by now, hopefully. But yeah, from high
Yeah.
school. So
Right.
yeah. But
But
oh, go
other
ahead.
than, oh, I was gonna say, other than that, as far as hobbies, just to keep myself reasonably in shape, I do work out a lot. I go to the gym, 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week for, an hour or two when I go, mainly just because what I do now doesn't require any physical activity at all.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so I go lift weights a little bit, sometimes do a little cardio just to, again, stay in some kind of reasonable shape. As you get older, it's real easy to let yourself go
Yeah.
because I'm sure you've probably been to like these high school reunions. You go to like your 25th high school reunion and you see some of these people you went to school with, and man, they look broke down. They look so bad. I mean, I see guys that are my age or even a year or two younger that I went to school with, and they look like they could be my father. They look
Yeah.
so old, and it's like I don't want to be like that.
Hmm.
And
Nah.
and I was getting kind of like that before I signed up for a gym membership and started working out, because
Mhm.
I started doing this about 7 or 8 years ago. I had some severe back problems at the time. I was really struggling with some stuff. And oddly enough, starting a gym membership and working out on a regular basis fixed all those problems. All the pain went away, and uh, that's really the reason I've stuck with it. It's just I'm scared to go back to being hurting all the time and having
Yeah.
problems getting out of bed, dressing myself because, all the crazy back pain. And, I wrecked my back when I was younger because doing stuff you shouldn't do, picking up
Yeah.
on things you shouldn't, working offshore for a little while, things like
Uh-huh.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, I agree, man. Yeah, I mean, like, especially, during that pandemic, I know a lot of people just kind of sit at
Yeah.
home, and,
You had
and
no choice.
sit on the
Yeah.
couch. Yeah, yeah, you gotta stay in shape though in order to, healthy. Yeah, the more healthy you are, the longer. I
Yeah.
mean, your health is your wealth.
Yeah, it really is. And
Yep.
it's not as difficult as a lot of people make it out. As far as a lot of people would like to sign up for a gym membership and work out on a regular basis, but they think it's too difficult because they imagine that it's going to take them months or years to achieve any kind of goal. Well, that's not really the way to think about it. Because do you think about it that way when you went to school all them years, or you work a job all them years? You're not thinking, oh, I've got to work 30 years to finally retire. No, you start doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually you get there. And it's the same way with this. You just start a habit, make sure you do it every day,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Um, Now I wanted to like go back to Linux a little bit. So, uh, do you still? Because I remember, like I said, I've been following you for years, man. Do you still do a lot of distro hopping?
Not on my workstations anymore. I did a lot
Mm-hmm.
those first couple of years on the channel. Um, and I realized that was the wrong thing to do because it really got in the way of recording,
Oh yeah.
especially back then. I was doing more live streams. I don't live stream as much now, but the kind of live streams like you're doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
trying to distro hop and then immediately start a live stream. That's a bad idea. The chances of that working are almost zero.
Exactly.
You know, once you've had a few disasters where you plan a stream, it doesn't work out, or I had one where I installed Antics.
Mm-hmm.
This was about 4 years ago. I installed Antics, which is a Debian stable based distribution. But I was like, you know what? I don't want Debian stable. Packages are too old and crusty.
Mm-hmm.
I switched all the mirrors to unstable and then took a massive update because everything on the system at that point's got to update since the last
Oh yeah.
Debian, right? So updated like 1,000 packages, rebooted the machine. I had a stream scheduled. As soon as I rebooted the machine, I started the YouTube stream, turned on the camera and everything's working. Start the stream. I start talking, and then I go to switch some scenes in OBS, and I realize my keyboard had quit working. The mouse had quit working. The computer is completely frozen, but I'm streaming. I can't stop the stream. The camera's on, the microphone's working. I'm just talking to people. Computer's frozen.
Wow.
So I just sat there and talked for like an hour, hour and a half. And at the end of the stream, I had to physically power off the machine to kill the stream. People in the chat were clowning on me the whole time because normally I would have been demonstrating something on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
but I couldn't. I was like, well, computer's frozen. I'm just going to sit here and talk to you guys.
Yeah, I think I
And
remember that stream.
so that was the last time I ever, that was the final straw. That was the last time I hopped and then tried to do a recording or a stream. I was like, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? I'm going to install something. And if it's working, why hop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, and the reason I asked because, um, I stopped a while back as well, and I typically use a lot of virtual machines, for like all my recordings and all that stuff. Now, do you have you ever used Proxmox? Have you ever
I
played
have
around
not.
with it? Oh, okay.
I have
All
not.
right. All right. All right. So how do you record? You normally use boxes or um
Yeah, well, Vert Manager, which is
oh, Vert Manager.
the
Yeah.
same boxes. They're both, aren't they both QEMU?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they
QEMU.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's what I've been using here lately. I have VirtualBox also installed
Mhm.
because sometimes you'll find something that won't install or, doesn't look right or act right in Vert Manager, but VirtualBox, it works or vice versa. So I've got both installed. I do have an IC dock in this machine. An IC dock is basically a drive bay that you
Mhm.
can keep some detachable drives in. I've got a 6 dock IC dock. So I've got 6 different drives in that. So I could install up to 6 extra operating systems each drive and their own disk. So there's no real risk of you accidentally overriding the wrong drive. For example, the wrong my main hard drive that's actually got my actual installation on it, right?
Mhm.
And the good thing with the IC dock being detachable, if you're worried about overriding the wrong drives, you can just pull them all out except the one you want to write to.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
nice. I don't do much of that anymore as far as doing it on the physical hardware.
Mhm.
Mostly what I'm using those for these days is I'll install stuff on physical hardware for me to play with
Mhm.
on my actual machine. And then if I need to record it, I'll install it in a VM just to make the recording a little easier doing it in the VM.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. and that's why I brought up Price Mics, because it was just I was just mainly bringing it up because that's how I do mine now. Is So I have a totally separate computer that runs my virtual machines, so
Right.
it doesn't affect any of my. Because I used to have issues like with VirtualBox running, as well as the recording software and all that stuff. So yeah, I was just that's.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a problem with me when I started
Hmm.
my YouTube channel. I would say the first year,
Hmm.
the computer I was using wasn't a great computer. And then if it's not a great computer to begin with, the specs on it are kind of average at best.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to run a virtual machine. Yeah. Good luck with that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Exactly.
now I've got a pretty good computer, good CPU, good GPU, 64 gigs of RAM, which is a lot of RAM, but
Hmm.
it comes in handy, especially if you do things with multiple virtual machines at a time. You're going to run out of RAM. 16 gigs
Oh
just
yeah.
isn't enough.
Yeah, that's so true. And
Yeah.
that was gonna be my next question. Like, what is uh your workstation? Like, what hardware and everything, if you want to talk
Um,
about it.
yeah, this machine is actually not that new now
Mm,
because I've had this machine about 3 years, maybe a little longer. I'm not sure at this point. It's running one of the early Threadrippers, one
oh
of the
yeah.
first models, running it's at the 1920. Um, it's the 12 core, 24 Threadripper, the first generation
Okay.
of that, which is still a monster
Mm-hmm.
CPU because those 24 threads. The reason I bought it is because of those 24 threads. It really makes video editing and rendering so much faster.
Yeah.
so, so that was nice. Of course, we talked about the 64 gigs of RAM. The RAM comes in handy both in things like video editing. Caden Live can suck up half of that 64 gigs of RAM
Oh
if
yeah.
I allow it. Blender is another application that'll take all the RAM you can get it. But also the virtual machines is another reason why I have all that RAM.
Mm-hmm.
The GPU is the Radeon 7, which was brand new at the time I bought this machine.
Okay.
And that's got 16 gigs of onboard memory on it, which again is a really nice for what we do with video editing and streaming.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I
that's
was.
mostly what it is. I've got three monitors. I use a triple monitor setup. I always have. I've been using three monitors now for probably 8, 10 years.
Oh
Because
yeah.
once you go multi monitors,
You
you
can't
really
go
can't
back.
go. You can't,
Yeah.
and it actually makes it, especially video content creation. For those of you thinking about doing this, it's really nice having at least a second monitor just for OBS, just so you can actually see what you're recording. And then you can have your desktop if you're recording your desktop, or if you got show notes, or all the other stuff. It makes it so much more convenient because otherwise, if you're on a single monitor, you got to do Alt Tab switch. You're going to hit
Mm-hmm.
record in OBS, but you don't see what's actually being recorded. And don't be surprised if you Alt Tab back and you were recording the wrong thing, you were on the wrong scene, or
Yeah.
bad things happen.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I agree. So, what's your favorite distribution now?
Well, the one I've been running for oh well over 2 years now on this workstation is Arco Linux. The one I'm running on my home computer is also Arco Linux. And the reason I'm running Arco, the main reason I'm running Arco on this workstation is because I installed it
Mm-hmm.
and it's working. Until it gives me a reason to format the drive and do something else, there's no reason. I'm not one of those people now looking to hop. If something's
Mm-hmm.
working, I just stick with it.
Yeah, if it's broke,
So
don't fix it.
yeah, and
I
there's
mean, if
just
it
no
ain't
reason
broke,
to.
don't fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
But Arch-based distributions make a lot of sense for me because I test a lot of software and want the latest and greatest, right? So that's
Oh
why
yeah.
I'm on Arch. Plus the AUR, I'm much more likely to find some of the really weird, obscure stuff. If something's brand new, it's much more likely to be on Arch than any other distribution. I'll find it in the AUR packaged by somebody.
Oh yeah.
So it just makes sense for what I do. Now, if I wasn't a YouTuber, I ever retire from YouTube, I mentioned this the other day on a stream I did or a video I did with someone, is if I didn't do YouTube, I'd probably go back to being like a Debian stable user or an Ubuntu LTS user because I don't want rolling updates. I don't like them, right? I
Hmm.
deal with them now because I have to. But ideally, I would like nothing on my computer to update because that would mean nothing on my computer should ever break. Of course, that's not really the case because I've broken Debian many times, broken Ubuntu many times, but they definitely break less.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's dope. Um, Now, that's pretty much all the questions I have for you, but um, I'm trying to see if someone asked anything in the chat.
Yeah, we can
Oh, go
open
ahead.
it up to the YouTube chat if they got any questions or
Yeah.
for me or you or
Mm-hmm.
both of us. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you just getting here, I'm not sure if you guys just got here, but just going on and like the video, and all that stuff. But today I have, Derek from Distro, what I'm saying? Definitely check out his channel, subscribe and all that stuff. He has a lot of great Linux content. And if you have any questions for him, you know what I'm saying, Linux or otherwise, go on and drop them in the chat.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Martin in the chat. He says high five. He's got a Master of Arts in music as well. Very cool, Martin.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah, my degree was a master's in music for performance.
Okay.
Actually, uh, because a
Now,
lot of people ask because there's different music degrees. You got performance and education and composition and different areas of musical study.
did you get into to music early in like high school or
Oh yeah, elementary school.
elementary?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
at a young age. I think fifth or sixth grade, we started band, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, it just went from there.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And so
You,
so
you know,
you. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, in the early years, fifth grade, sixth grade, they get all the kids together and you play this weird little plastic flute thing called the flutophone that
Yeah.
just sounds horrible. Yeah. And then they eventually let you play a real instrument.
Yeah. 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 And I started out in fifth grade too. I didn't do much in middle school. Up until like I would say seventh or eighth grade is when I got into the band.
Hmm.
So yeah, and down there in Louisiana, they had the marching bands and
Yeah,
all that stuff.
marching
So
band.
I fell right into to all of that.
And marching band is big. I guess marching band's big everywhere, but yeah, and down here it's a big deal. Like they take it seriously at the
Oh
high
yeah,
school level and at the college level.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I grew up. I don't know if I tell you this, but I grew up in Baton Rouge, which Southern University right there,
Right.
and yeah,
Yeah.
human jukebox.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's not familiar with Southern, they should definitely YouTube Southern Band. I think.
Oh yeah.
See, I'm up here closer to Grambling.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
So did you watch the Bayou Classic?
I
Just to
didn't
actually.
check it out this
Okay,
year.
yeah.
No, I
I did.
sure
I didn't
didn't.
either.
I didn't have time, but I knew it was going on because it's such a
Hmm.
big deal. Everybody talks about it, but
Yeah.
no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody in the chat, full time Linux says, "Do you use Linux to host websites or other projects?" Yeah, I have some personal websites. Some are public, some I don't make public, but yeah, I've got a variety of things out on the web that are hosted on Linux servers. My main public site is distro.tube. That's I believe I'm running that on a DigitalOcean droplet. I have a few different web hosts, but that's running Ubuntu server.
Okay.
I wrote the entire website in Emacs org mode.
Okay.
Basically, that was the whole point of me making that site was to see if I could write something in org mode, which is kind of like a markdown syntax, and then
Hmm.
export the whole thing to HTML, static HTML, and then throw it up on a site. Um, so it's not a modern fancy looking website. It's just more of a proof of concept. But I think it turned out all right considering what I was going for there.
Hmm. Yeah, and I remember a while back you did a video on Hugo.
Mhm.
Do you? Do you still use that, or are you?
No, that site
Mhm.
has been replaced by this current one. I did use
Okay.
Hugo,
Yeah.
uh, but then Hugo, you write everything in Markdown. Although now I think you can also write in Emacs org mode, so it might be something I revisit in the future. I'm not sure at this point, but yeah, Hugo was great. I had no problems with it. As far as it's a nice way to set up a static website. If you don't
Mhm.
need a dynamic website, which most people don't, I don't need to be fooling with PHP and MySQL. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't need a database. That's just you know people get mad at the word bloat, but really for most people's personal website, that's just complete bloat. Having a SQL database,
Mhm.
you know,
No,
for all
you're
you're
right.
putting up, if you're putting up a 5 page or a 10 page website, you don't need WordPress. Right? You don't need any of that stuff. Right?
Yeah, and that was my problem. I was using, WordPress and Joomla at
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning, and yeah, it's just too
And I
bloated.
like WordPress. I like Joomla. I played a lot with them in years past, and even sometimes I'll take a look at the latest WordPress and I'll spin up something on localhost. And even though I'm not really in that kind of game anymore, I really am not trying to be a web dev.
Yeah,
Uh, they're great projects, but the problem is most people think everyone has to use those big, massive content management systems
yeah.
like WordPress, and you really don't.
Hmm.
And I think it's part of the reason why the web has lost a lot of its charm is because everything's running on WordPress, right?
Yeah,
It's like the entire web runs on WordPress when I think we'd have more variety. We'd have a little bit more diverse ecosystem if everybody wants to use the same thing. It's always the case with people. That's why Facebook is around. Why is everybody on Facebook? Well, because everybody is on Facebook.
hmm,
If I'm not on Facebook, I'm not part of humanity at that
yeah,
point because I'm the only one that's not. It's like, no, that's the reason they have a monopoly is because people won't leave and, try to do something else.
yeah, yeah. And that's true.
You
Now,
know?
that does bring up something else I wanted to ask you about. Do you value the Linux operating system because of the privacy as well? Is that one thing
Yeah,
you?
that's probably the main reason I run Linux is because it's free and open source. That's really, I could run any free and open source operating system because it's more than the operating system. It's the ideology behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And that ideology, that philosophy, free software, right, does it translates into your software respecting you more, which when we're talking about privacy, yeah, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, Linux distributions are not going to do things that Windows does
Yeah.
because they typically are not going to install trialware kind of program. The stuff if
Mm-hmm.
you ever had a standard installation of Windows on a computer you ever buy, half
Yeah.
the programs, are trialware. They're going to expire unless you pay for them. And then you got ads sometimes, the modern versions of Windows, you get advertisements even in some of the programs and,
Mm-hmm.
things that Linux distributions just don't do. If they did do, nobody'd use them because there's a 300 other Linux distributions I could go use. So why would I use one? So it is different.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to worry about, for the most part, you don't have to worry about Linux distribution spying on you, data mining you.
Mm-hmm.
There are occasionally you'll see a shady one crop up, but the shady ones are usually easy to spot. They're not legit.
Oh yeah. And they quickly get called out. So
Yeah.
I agree with you there.
And because
Um,
we have the one that came up a couple of months ago. It's been around for a few months, but when Linux FX, which used to be called Windows
yeah.
FX, they had to rename it because they were worried that Microsoft was going to sue them. So they changed it to Linux FX, but it's a straight clone of Windows 11. Look,
Mm-hmm.
artwork, wallpaper, icons. It's even got a lot of Microsoft software installed on it. You have to register for a key, a software key to run it. And
Yeah.
and then they were maintaining this database of users, their email and their keys,
Mm-hmm.
and they were doing it in such a way that it was an eighth grader could have hacked this thing because it's all on the web. I
Wow.
could give you the URL. You could, in the terminal, curl this URL, and you get a whole list of everybody that's ever signed up for Linux FX and their keys.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually demonstrated that on a video.
Yeah, somebody called me out on that distribution because I just did it without really. I did
Well,
some
depending
research
on
on
when
it.
you did it,
Yeah,
if you did it, a few months back, then that was probably before people realized what was going on.
yeah, it
But it
was.
was, yeah. There's a lot of strange things with that distribution. I don't think it would be responsible for anybody to run that on a production machine. If you need to use Windows, you're much better off using Windows
Yeah.
than something like that, because Windows, whatever problems it has, they're probably not going to completely hose you the way whatever group spun up this Linux distribution is going to do to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which sounds weird, somebody like me saying that, but I trust Windows more in some cases than some of
Yeah.
these Linux distributions.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of have to in
Yeah.
that case, you know.
Hmm.
But restored and highly favored 777 says, what in your opinion, what's the best distribution to start with in a virtual lab if I'm assuming if someone was trying to learn Linux
Well,
or a beginner, you know, type Linux
if you're
distribution.
just talking about for educational purposes,
Mm,
I would probably start with something that you're actually likely to use in a professional setting. I'm assuming that's what he's asking here. Obviously, I don't work in that space, but I would think something like Ubuntu LTS would be
okay.
would be where you want to go with that, because you're going to encounter Ubuntu so much in the server market anyway, and obviously it's great as a desktop operating system. I mean, you could do something like Debian stable as well, but Debian is great on the server, not so much on the desktop though. It might frustrate some people trying
Hmm.
to use Debian as a desktop operating system.
Yeah. Now someone else asked, Ryan Newton. He said, "What's your opinion on Red Hat distros like Fedora, CentOS, Rocky, etc.?"
Well, I used CentOS, like I said, for years on servers as far as web servers, and I was fine with it. I get web hosts, especially years ago. Nowadays, they typically give you choices, but back in the day, you'd sign up for a particular web host, and all you got was whatever operating system.
Oh
If it
yeah.
happened to be Debian, that's what you went with. If it happened to be CentOS, that's what you went with. But I was fine either way. Everything you want to do, you can do on any distribution. They're all the same at the end of the day. Once you have some experience, they're a little different. Debian uses a different package manager than
Hmm.
Fedora, and then CentOS. It's but it's all the same shell utilities.
Yeah.
And if it runs the same shell and all the same shell utilities, at the end of the day, every command you enter in a Debian computer is pretty much going to work on a Red Hat computer,
Hmm. Yep.
with some very minor exception. When you're talking about package management, some things will be different, but for the most part, 99.9% of the time, all the commands are the same, so it doesn't matter. Fedora, I have run Fedora on physical hardware as far as just as a desktop computer,
Hmm.
and it's fine. Um, it's fine for somebody like me. I don't know if I'd put a brand new to Linux user on it. I don't think it's beginner friendly.
Yeah.
But for somebody that's been around for a few months, yeah, I think they'd enjoy Fedora. They'd be as fine with Fedora as they would be something like Ubuntu, for example.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't actually tried Rocky Linux. I know, it's a Red Hat based distribution trying to replace CentOS. I have tried Alma Linux. I don't know if you,
Okay. Oh
and
yeah.
that's really interesting. Yeah, I just spun it up in a virtual machine, played around with it, for a few hours over a couple of days. A while back, I actually did a little bit of a video on it, and it was actually a pretty neat project. For those that are unhappy that CentOS is no longer with us, there's options.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I recommend you DistroTube. I recommend you check out Rocky though if you haven't,
People have
you
asked
know,
me.
because yeah, because the person that ran the CentOS project is the person that created Rocky. I
Right.
don't know if you knew that. Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, Gregory Cursor. He
Okay.
he uh he runs the Rocky Linux project now.
Yeah,
So
cool.
yeah.
Huh.
because they switched up. You know, they switched up the way
Mhm.
they do the operating system. Let me see. What's something else? Let's see. Full time Linux distro two. How do you see the Linux paid app program ecosystem growing? I found that many Linux GUI apps aren't great looking or don't provide crucial functionality.
Yeah, that's an issue that we have to solve. I think some of it, I think this is a chicken or the egg kind of problem. Is like, some of
Yeah,
these apps don't look as good, and they probably don't look as good because nobody's paying these people enough money to actually work on it.
yeah,
But at the same time, you know, nobody wants to pay these people money to work on something that doesn't look very good right now. Right? It's just kind of, it's. But I do see free and open source projects out there that are very high level, professional level products that could compete with any proprietary piece of software. I mentioned Blender briefly earlier.
mm,
Blender is just a absolutely fantastic, highly professional level piece of free and open source software. And the
really
reason
is.
it is because they have a real company behind it and they do make money.
Hmm.
And that's why they're able to do that. So there are people out there that are making free and open source software that they do make money. Unfortunately, not everybody has worked out how to do that.
Hmm.
I think a lot of it too. I think some people have to understand, like when you make a piece of closed source proprietary software, you're not going to get paid for it until you actually write the whole thing and it's actually ready. You're ready for a 1.0 release, and then you can put it out to the world. Hopefully, people will buy it. A lot of people think this misconception with free and open source software. I can start working on it now. People start paying me now before it's really ready.
Hmm.
But that's not really the way it works in even the closed source proprietary world. I think a lot of people have to understand that they're going to have to work on something for a while
Yeah,
before they actually ever make a dollar on it.
exactly.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Um, Now, Caesar asked, I would like to ask Derek, where can I start to learn Emacs? And let me answer this for you, Derek. Check out DistroTube's channel because he talks a lot about Emacs,
I talk
Vim.
about, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was. I'm glad you mentioned that. Or if you're interested in learning Emacs with the evil key bindings, meaning everything uses the Vim key bindings.
Hmm.
I've got plenty of videos about that. Now, Emacs out of the box has its own kind of key bindings.
Yeah.
So, and I don't focus on that very much on my videos. When I first switched to Emacs about 3 years ago, I spent like 30 days trying to learn the default Emacs key bindings. So you might find some videos just telling you some of the basic key bindings on that,
Hmm.
but mostly I focus on a distribution of Emacs called Doom Emacs, which out of the box, everything's set up for you. It's got a bunch of plugins already ready to go, including Evil Mode, where basically your text editor is Vim inside of Emacs. It's not Vim, but people wrote Emacs, the editor, to emulate Vim almost perfectly. There's almost nothing that you can do in Vim that you can't do in Evil Mode and Emacs. So if you want a good place to learn Emacs, like the Emacs way, the more traditional way where you learn the Emacs key bindings and then you learn how to build your own distribution of Emacs, essentially. You write your own config. There's a channel called System Crafters on YouTube. So
Okay.
check out System Crafters. Great content, mostly Emacs content, although he does some other stuff. He covers GNU Geeks, which is a distribution of Linux. It is a free software only distribution of Linux. Really neat project, but be careful if you install GNU Geeks because most machines won't be able to run it being a fully free distribution because it's going to run the Linux Libre kernel, which is a fully free Linux kernel. It's no
Oh
no
yeah.
proprietary blobs at all, and a lot of hardware, especially for example laptops. You're going to have Wi-Fi chips that need a proprietary driver.
Yeah.
You're never going to have Wi-Fi work on that machine if you install GNU Geeks, unless you swap out the Wi-Fi card to one that's got a free driver somewhere.
Hmm.
Because I'm a member of the Free Software Foundation. I support the free software movement, right? Big proponent of free software. I don't run any of the official FSF approved distros, the Free Software Foundation approved distros. There's like 10 or 12 of them. It's because they all have to be 100% free software
Yeah.
running this fully free Linux kernel. I don't have a machine that can do that.
Yep.
My home computer, I can't even get them to boot, mainly
Mhm.
because of the graphics card. I got an NVIDIA card. None of my laptops have a Wi-Fi chip that would be supported by any of those distros. So it's unfortunate. But one of the things we do lack, we're winning with free and open source software. Where we're not winning is open hardware.
Mhm.
And we still got a long way to go on that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Um, let me see. So, let's see. How would you incentivize developers to make paid software? Well, you kind of answered that, but
Yeah.
if you want, yeah. Let me see. Hey, DT. When, how long do you think it will take for NVIDIA integration in the Linux kernel? If you want to
I
answer
haven't
that. Mm,
I haven't been paying that close attention, but I thought they'd already some of that work has already started.
mm,
Now, obviously, NVIDIA is not going to open source everything. There's still going to be proprietary drivers, and there's going to be stuff that's not going to be open sourced and part of the kernel, fully open sourced.
mm,
But I'm hopeful that NVIDIA will eventually open source everything. I know when I say that, a lot of people, it's like, not NVIDIA. They're never going to do that. But I don't know. Intel open sources all of its drivers already.
yeah.
AMD open sources all of its drivers already. And eventually, I think NVIDIA is going to realize, hey, all our competitors are doing this. It's not really hurting them.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be in our best interest to go that route.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see that. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you load up drivers that are not free onto one of the Free Software Foundation approved distros? You can, but it's not going to be something that the distribution is going to support necessarily, because being a Free Software Foundation approved distro, the people that are running it are trying to make it free only.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have like a non-free uh, branch, or they're not going to have like a non-free repository of NVIDIA drivers for you. No, you're going to have to go get that yourself. If you're comfortable with that, yeah, you can get some non-free stuff on those distros. It's just going to be work. And at that point, it kind of defeats the purpose of running that distribution,
Yeah.
because most people that are running it are trying to get the completely 100% free distribution. If you're just going to put proprietary software back on it, you probably should have just installed your standard, Ubuntu or Arch or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the Free Software Foundation distros most of them are either Ubuntu or Arch based, and they just rip out the proprietary bits.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And shout out to my man Aquatech. He says, "What are your thoughts on Linux?" And this will be the last question for you, Derek, because I don't want to hold you too long. But it says, "What are your thoughts on Linux becoming just as ubiquitous as Windows for desktop PC gaming?"
I don't know if it's ever going to reach that level, because I mean, you're starting so far behind as far as market share. If
Mm-hmm.
you're a serious gamer, even now, even with Steam and Proton and Vulkan, and you know, I know the gaming experience on Linux is really good. It's still not as good as Windows, because at the end of the day, every single game manufacturer, what are they writing their software to run on? They're
Mm-hmm.
actually writing it to run on Windows. The fact that we've got these workarounds, these hacks essentially to make it run on Linux, that's not as good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not a gamer, so take my word with a grain of salt. Like, I don't game, but if you were serious about gaming, and like gaming is your life, and I know a lot of people, especially young people, that's a legit concern. Yeah, probably I would tell those people to just run Windows.
Yep.
You know, that pains me a little bit, but honestly, if you have to run Windows software, then you should be running Windows. And you really, if you want to run Linux, you should be wanting to explore the Linux software, right? But a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, they want to switch to Linux and then they still want to run all their Windows stuff. And
Yeah.
if you're trying to do that, then you're setting yourself up for so much heartache and pain. And I don't want people to go through that.
Yeah, and I kind of gave up on trying to get my sons a while back to switch to Linux because they can't live without their Roblox.
Oh, it's even if 99% of their games run on Linux, they're the one they want to play is that
Yep.
one that doesn't. Oh yeah,
Yep.
and they're going to be mad because all their friends are playing that game and they're
Yep.
left out because they can't. You know, it's
Yeah.
okay.
So I just
Just
let
run
them run
Windows.
Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Derek, man, this has been an awesome conversation. I know we kind of just um went off the cuff.
Rambled on a little bit
Yeah.
about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. But let me bring up your channel right fast. But you guys definitely go check out DistroTube here on YouTube. I have his channel linked down in the well, I actually just put it in the comments. And I'm sure a lot of you guys that are over here have probably heard of DistroTube, but if you haven't, just go down and check out DistroTube. He has a great channel, you know, on the Linux, you know, operating system, free and open source software. Um, Great
And
guy.
for
Oh, go
those
ahead.
I was going to say for those that want to watch the videos and don't want to be on the YouTube platform, because I know a lot of free software people would prefer not to even be on YouTube and have to watch these videos. I am on Odyssey. I have a Odyssey. I've been on Odyssey since kind of the early days of Odyssey, so you'll find me on there as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. You got me over there as well.
But
So
there you
I'm
go.
over there as well. So yeah,
As a
definitely.
matter of fact, I'm following you on Odyssey now that you mentioned that. Yep.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah.
Because I do see your video. I check out Odyssey a lot, as far as their
Hmm.
homepage, and their homepage is always the people you follow. And
Yeah.
I catch your videos on there.
Cool, cool. Yeah. Yeah, not and he's did a video on Odyssey. I've done a video on Odyssey as well. You guys, if you're interested, yeah, check out Odyssey. I definitely agree with your statement, which, you know, it was called library back in the day.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's still the protocol that everything runs on is still called library, right?
Yeah.
The cryptocurrency is called library, but they wanted to get away from the library name for the website. It's because they wanted people to be able to run their own instances,
Hmm.
and kind of as a proof of concept, they created Odyssey, this website. And then remember they had library.tv running at the same time for a little while, just as, hey, you can have two different instances of this thing running. But still, I don't know of any other instances now of other than Odyssey.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
technically it's just protocol. Anybody could set up their
Yeah.
own instance of it.
Yep, you're right. You're right. But no, I definitely appreciate all you guys coming through, all the people that donated to the channel as well. You guys, you know, keep things going over here on the channel. And by you donating, that let me know that you know, support what I'm doing. So I'm gonna continue keep bringing this type of content to the channel. So it's
Heck
definitely
yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
because you make a difference, and I'm sure you get those comments of people that you helped in life
mhm,
or in work in their profession.
yeah.
You put out great content, so
Appreciate it. Yep.
and one of my favorite channels on YouTube.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it,
All right,
Derek. And if you can stick around after this, I'm gonna run a little outro and
yeah,
then
I got you.
I'll talk to you in the back for a second. But
All
peace
right.
to everybody. Y'all have a good day. Peace.